Bez Hashem is we begin Perek Shmini, the 8th chapter in the Rambam Mishneh Torah, the laws of blessing, and the Seif Hav, the book of love, which in this perek we begin now discussing regarding the halachas of brachas on other types of food items, specifically regarding Paris and other things, as Rambam begins halacha regarding the general rule. Kol Peres Ilan, all the fruits of the tree, you make a bracha on it before you eat, bless your Hashem, etc., the whole bracha, he creates the fruits of the tree. At the end, after he finishes eating, burn the first Rabbi, which is the generic bracha, he creates all many different souls and their lackings, and he fills them up. Although they grow on the tree, except for the 5 types that are written in the Torah, which behem and they are anavim, the grapes, and uteinim, and figs, beremainim, and pomegranates, berzeisim, and olives, tamarim, and dates, which, although we generally say the 5 types, we mean the 5 types of grain, here it's actually not, there's 7 types that Eretz Yisrael is praised with, and 5 of them are not the 2 types of grains. On these things, although they're priya 8, he makes the bracha on them afterwards, bracha achas mein shalosh. The one bracha that's a conglomeration of the 3 blessings of Berachos Hamazon, because it's from the Shivas Aminim, from the 7 types that Yisrael is praised. And regarding the fruits of the land, vegetables, and herbs, the bracha making it beforehand is that he creates the fruits of the land. Things that don't grow from the land, for example, basar, meat, gvina, cheese, dagim, and fish, beitzim, and eggs, and mayim, and water, b'cholav, and milk, dvash, and honey, all these types of things. But initially you make the bracha shahakol, that everything was made with his word, was the most generic bracha. At the end, burn the first rabbis, that he creates many souls. Now, someone drinks water, if it's not to quench his thirst, because if it's to quench your thirst, so it's giving you some type of pleasure. But if it's not, in Tam Bracha, it doesn't require blessing, not before, not after, because there's no pleasure in the water. Other drinks, even if you're not thirsty, but there's the actual taste that's pleasurable. Water is only if it gives you for the thirst, and if not, there's no bracha. Halacha base. Hasechet pears. If someone squeezes out fruits, and he squeezes out the juice, this fruit juice. You make the bracha initially shahakol on the juice. You make shahakol except for when you squeeze out grapes and olives. On wine, which is squeezed out from grapes, you make the bracha by that he creates the fruits of the grapevine. At the end, bracha achmein shalish, that which of the 3, which is the al hagefen as we call it. And on oil, but initially makes the bracha by priya 8, that he creates the fruits of the tree. Now, Bamedram, when we say this, that you can make a by priya 8 on the shemen, on the oil, if something was hurting him in his throat. And he's drinking from the oil together with vegetable juice, cooked vegetable juice, and similar type of things, because he's getting pleasure from his drinking, because it's with the vegetable juice, so it tastes good, and he's also doing it for the purposes of the oil, which that's good for his throat. So then you can make the bracha on the beverage of the oil. But if he's just drinking plain oil where there's no good taste, there's no pleasure, or his throat wasn't hurting him. So then even if he's mixing in the oil with the vegetable juice, the oil is not the primary. It's nullified to the water of the vegetable juice. Then you make the bracha shahakol on the whole beverage, because he's not really having pleasure from the taste of the oil. Halacha gimel. Peiros yirakas shedarkan l'achal chaim. Fruits or vegetables that the norm is to eat it raw. So in bishul, if it's cooked, or stewed, you can actually downgrade the bracha to a shahakal, which is more generic, the more specific, the higher the level of the bracha is, because it's downgraded from significance because it's not normally cooked, normally eaten raw. So it's a downgrade. At the end, make it burn the fashes. Now, regarding the other way around, vegetables that are normally eaten cooked, for example, krov, cabbage, velefas, and turnips. If you eat it raw, which is also not the norm, so it has the downgraded level of shahakal, is not normally eaten raw. At the end, burn the fashes rabbis, you make it burn the fashes. Now, if you cooked it or you stewed it, so then you can make the bracha that's appropriate for it, which is how it's supposed to be eaten, like potatoes, all these things, at the end, burn the fashes rabbis. Now, regarding things that are normally eaten raw and cooked, when you eat it, whether raw or cooked, you make the appropriate bracha rulahen, that's appropriate for them. Meaning, if it's a fruit of the tree, you make a bracha by priya 8. If it's fruits from the ground, or vegetables, you make a bracha like apples, these things can be eaten raw and cooked, then it gets the same bracha either way. Halacha dal, yiraka shedarkan lisholik. Now, regarding vegetables that normally are stewed, cooked, shlakon, so the cooked juice, mevarcha meishelik shalem, the bracha you make on the soup, the cooked vegetables, is boy pradama, is that he creates the fruits of the ground because that's its norm, that's its derech, and therefore gets the bracha of the fruit itself. But who that is? If you were cooking it to drink the waters, the soup. Because the vegetable soup is like the vegetables themselves. In other words, it's not like when you squeeze out a fruit that we say you make a shahakal and halacha beis, because there the beverage doesn't have the taste of the fruit, whereas when you cook the vegetables, it literally gets the taste of the vegetable itself. And that is b'makom shahakal l'shtoisen. If it's in a place where the norm is to drink it. Dvash tamarim, regarding date honey, you make the bracha initially shahakal, because it's like we said, a derivative that's not the thing itself. Avotamarim, regarding dates, shema achan biyad, which was squeezed by hand, and you took out the pits. You make it like a dough. You can make it bracha initially creates that he creates the fruits of the tree, because it's still the actual tamar itself. At the end, bracha you make the al ha'etz. Halacha regarding other food items. Hakanim hamatukim, regarding the sweet sticks, which is the sugar canes, that they squeeze it out, and they cook the juice that comes out from these sugar canes until it crystallizes and that looks like salt, which is sugar. All the goinim, they say that you make a bracha and it creates fruits of the ground. Sometimes you make a bayir pre-eitz. They make a bayir pre-eitz. The question is it a tree? Is it a bush? Is it considered the primary thing? Is it considered a derivative? Is it considered something like from the ground? They said, meaning the hold that the canes are pri hadamam, that the cane is actual the pri of the adama itself. It's not like a tree itself. So they say whoever sucks out those canes, makes a bracha by pri hadama. It's a fruit of the ground. But on the Yerma says the Rambam, when I say shein pri, it's not a fruit. The only the bracha you make on it is going to be shahakal. Because he says, you can't say that the honey of these canes, which, in other words, even if you're going to say that it's priya eitz, and if you suck it out, you make a very priya eitz, but at least the sugar that comes out from it, he's saying that shenishtal de or that gets changed through the fire by cooking it, by crystallizing it, it can't be any gadol, it can't be greater than dvash tamarim. Then the date honey shenishtal de or, which wasn't even changed through the fire, still you make a bracha in the shahakal. All the more so, the sugar for sure that gets processed for sure is going to be a shahakal. Halacha b'akar, which is hearts of palm. It's on the top of the palm tree. It's like a white piece of wood, which is soft and it's sweet to the palate. You make a bracha on it beforehand, shahakal, because it's ultimately going to get hard like a tree. And initially, it was not planted for the intention of eating this hearts of palm, so it doesn't get its own. It's not like a pre of the eitz or adama. It's going to be a shahakal, something that tastes good. So it's like anything that does not have a distinct bracha. Kafras shel tzlaf, the leaves of the caper bush. You make a bracha on it, bar pri adama. Why? It's not the fruit. It's like a shamer of the pri. It's like a protector, so it doesn't have the bar pri eitz bracha. It's downgraded to like a bar pri adama. Whereas ve'v'yonis shotzlaf, the small little berries, which are the primary fruits of the caper bush, those are the fruits that like has like a form of a tamorim dakim katan. Looks like small thin dates. That you make it on the bracha by pre-aids, that he creates the fruits of the tree, which the caper bush is a tree, and the fruits is going to have that bracha. Halacha zayin hapepolin, regarding peppercorns, v'hazangvel and ginger. So when they're moist, mean to say that they're fit to be eaten, then you can make a bracha on it by pradama, that he creates the fruits of the ground, meaning, even though peppercorns grow on the tree, but since it's not normal for people to plant it to eat it as it is, only by mixing it into other cooked dishes, so it is appropriate to downgrade a little bit to by pradama. When they're dry, which often happens with ginger and with pepper, black pepper, then you don't have to make a blessing in it, not before, not after, if you're going to eat it straight. Because they're spices, it's not a food item. So two food items that are not fit to be eaten, or beverages not fit to drink, it's does not require bracha, not before, not after, even if you're going to be eating it. Regarding bread that became moldy, or regarding wine that develops a film on the surface because of its fermentation or a dish that changed its form, it got ruined. Or regarding these wind-blown fruits that before they fully matured. Or regarding beer, and vinegar, which is a certain type of kosher locust, and salt, and mushrooms and truffles. All these, so they have a taste, but either because they got downgraded, because they didn't fully mature yet, or whatever it is, on the oven you're going to make a shahakal. So mushroom and truffles, even though they grow from the ground, you can make a shahakal because ultimately its primary nourishment as a fungi is going to be from the air, and therefore it doesn't have a bar piyadama. Now, anything that you make on it a bracha of shakal beforehand, at the end you make on it after you finish a bar nefashis. And whatever requires a bracha after, meaning a bar nefashis, or whatever it is, but then it requires a bracha before. Meaning, in contrast, certain things require bracha before and not after, specifically when you're smelling aromatic spices. Halacha test. Shmagim, which are the wine lees, these are the sediments of wine. If you put on the 3 measurements of water, now when you pour it out, you find that you have 4 measurements of a beverage because the wine sediments mixed with the water and then added a quarter. You can make a bracha that he created the fruits of the grapevine. Because this halachically is going to be qualified as diluted wine, which is 3 parts water to 1 part wine. Now, but let's say when you're pouring out, you get less than 4 parts. Although it has a taste of wine, you make a bracha on it like it's water, just tasty water. You just make a bracha of shahakal before you drink it. Halachah regarding what happens in situations of doubt or situations of error. So beirich al peres ilan. If someone made a bracha on the fruits of the tree and instead he made the bracha beir piyadama, that he creates the fruits of the ground, he has to fulfill the obligation because ultimately a tree nourishes from the ground too, and therefore the fruits of the tree are also essentially by default fruits of the ground. But let's say made on fruits of the ground, a bracha that he creates fruits of the tree, he hasn't fulfilled the obligation because fruits of the ground are not included in the category of fruits of the tree. Now, regarding all of them in Berach Shakal, make a bracha shahakal, you have to fulfill the obligation, even on bread and wine, because ultimately that's the most generic bracha. Hashem created everything with the word, which is true, and therefore after the fact, it's valid for everything. If someone took a cup of beer in his hand, now he started the bracha saying Baruch Hashem with the intent to say shahakal, to end with the right bracha. But with Tava Amar made a mistake and he said Bai Pragafen. He forgot what he was drinking. Made Bai Pragafen. We don't make him say over the bracha. Let's say he had in front of himself fruits of the ground. Let me start the bracha with the intent to say Bai Pradam, he creates fruits of the ground. But Tava Amar Bai Priyetz, he made a mistake and he made the bracha Bai Priyetz. Even though these are the wrong brachas, we don't make him say it over again. And so let's say he had a cooked dish made out of grain. He started by having intent to say Barim Nazanis. But he made a mistake, he said the wrong bracha Maitzi. Yatas for the obligation because at the time that he said Hashem's name and Hashem's reign, meaning he said Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Ha'olam. When he said those words, which that's the primary bracha, he only had a mind for the proper bracha for that type of thing. So since in the primary part of the bracha, which people don't realize, they think they have in mind by the actual species that it is, that's not the main thing. The main thing is talking about Hashem, not what you're actually having. And since at that primary part of the bracha there was no toys, no mistake, although he ends up saying the wrong thing at the end, he has to fulfill the obligation because by the main part of the bracha he had in mind the right thing, and then we don't make him go back and say over a new bracha. All these blessings that we mentioned in this parak, which are rabbinic, in contrast to what we mentioned in parak Beis, we spoke about by a bread meal, berachas hamazon, that the rest I would have a different halacha. But all these blessings, if he's not sure regarding them, in berach or leberach, did he make the blessing or did he not? He does not have to go and say it over again, not regarding a doubt of bracha rishayna, bracha achrayna. They're all from rabbinic law, and we know that when it comes to subject derabanan, doubt regarding rabbinic law, we go lahakol, we go leniently. Now, shachach v'hichnis achol and teich peh bracha. What happens? Someone made a mistake. He forgot and he put food into his mouth without making a bracha first. So it depends. Im hoya mashkin, if it was a beverage where if you're going to spit out of your mouth, it's going to get ruined. You also can't move it to the side and make a bracha with liquid in your mouth. It's not possible to do that. So bolin, so you swallow without a bracha because we don't want you to ruin the food, which you have no other option. And you only make the bracha afterwards, the bracha achrayna. Now, if it's fruit, so it depends. Shims are not going to be spit out of your mouth. You must, they're going to get ruined. For example, tutman oven, berries, grapes, they get too mushy. It's not going to be good. So you just move it to one side of your mouth. And make it the last thing with it in your mouth. Then you swallow it. But if they're types of fruits that wouldn't get ruined, like beans and peas, where they're mushy anyway, and it's not going to taste any different. You spit it out of your mouth until you make the bracha, and you have your mouth clear, which is how it's supposed to be when you make a bracha, and then you go ahead and you eat it. Regarding precedence in regards to which bracha comes first. So if let's say in front of him had in front of him many different types of foods. So if their blessings were the same, for example, let's say he had an apple and an olive, both are very pre-aids. Okay, make the bracha on one of them, and that will exempt the rest. You don't have to make a bracha on every single one of them. Now, if the blessings were not the same, so then you make a bracha on each one of them, the appropriate bracha for it, and whichever one he wants to go and make the bracha on first, the one that he likes the best, Maktam will go first, even if the other type is from, let's say, from one of the Shibbos Aminim, which has a certain distinction to it. Now, but then let's say he doesn't care one over the other. Then if one of them is from the 7 species that Eretz Yisrael is praised with, so then if he doesn't care, it's not chaviv, then he should make the bracha on that one first. Now, whichever type is mentioned earlier in the verse, bracha comes first in the making of the bracha. And the 7 that I mentioned in this pasuk is, the pasuk says that it's an Eretz Yisrael is a land of chita, of wheat, of barley, begefen, and grapes, wine, te'ena, and figs, vadima, and pomegranates. It's an Eretz Zeh Hashem, it's a land of olive oil, with vash, and of honey. Now, what's interesting is with the vash zeh, dvash tamarim, this honey is date honey. Now, vatamarim, the dates, kolim lanavim, you make the bracha before grapes, even though it's written last, but shatmod misheni le'eretz, because the dates, the pasuk has the word eretz 2 times. So from the second time it says the word eretz, dates is number 2. Vanavim shlish le'eretz, grapes, although it's early in the pasuk, but it's number 3 from the first eretz. So actually tamarim come before the grapes. Regarding the bracha we call ala michya, ala gefen, but it's the bracha achash min shalish, the one that's a microcosm of the 3 blessings in Berachos Hamazon. So it's a mini benching, which is bracha achash min shalish, the one blessing that's from the 3 blessings of Berachos Hamazon. Shel chamesh leminim, when you're eating from the 5 types of grain, shel perish b'shel yayin, of the fruits, which is of wine, he shall mini hadagan, is meaning the 5 types of fruits, meaning not the 5 chamesh min hadagan, the 5 types that we said the 7 minim, but besides 2 of them are actually grain, schit and seira. The other 5 are actually of fruits and of wine. So hisha min hadagan, that bracha is the same type of bracha you make when you have on, which we already spoke about in Perek Gimel Lochi Yud Gimel, as the same as the bracha of the ala michya, which is for that of grain. Ella, the only difference is ala peres, when you're having fruits, let's say you're having a pomegranate. So on the fruit, he says, instead of ala michya val kakala, you say ala eitz on the tree, val priya eitz, and then the fruits of the tree. And the produce of the field, and on the desirable field, etc. So just like you said, just instead of michya, which you say for chit and seira, you're going to say, which is the 5 types, chit, seira, and you have shibboleth shul and spelt and kusman. But here for the other 5, it's just you'll have pears. Now balayayim, the one the gefen is the one that on wine you'll say ala gefen on the grapevine, bal priya gefen, and on the fruits of the grapevine. But now regarding both of them, you'll end ala aretz vala peres, on the land, on the fruits, which the Rabbi holds that on wine you say actually ala aretz val priya gefen, on the land, on the fruits of the wine, which that's our custom. Now the Ma'aber itself, he was in Eretz Yisrael, chaysim, the ending of the bracha is not just ala peres, it's ala aretz val peres seha, on the land, on its fruits, because you're in Eretz Yisrael, you want to praise its fruits distinctly. Now there are those who add on to this bracha that's one of the 3. Before you end of the bracha, kikel toiv umeitavata, because a good God who does good you are, because shumein bracha reis, that's like similar to the 4th bracha, which was added on later on of Berachos Hamazon, that's the idea of toiv umeitiv. Now, some say no. Shalei taking the bracha reis of Berachos Hamazon malvad. This 4th bracha was only instituted for benching and not for the bracha of the ala michya, which we said is similar to what we said these other 5 types of shivas aminim for the peris and for that of the wine. Let's say someone drinking wine, he drank wine, and he ate dates, and he also ate the 5 types, a cooked dish from the 5 types of grain. So you have an ala michya, you have ala eitz, and you have ala gefen. Now the Rambam doesn't have ala gefen, so ala eitz is both for wine and dates. So Mavarach B'Achrein, so you make a bracha Achrein at the end. Baruch Atah Hashem, Elokeinu melech haolam, blessed you Hashem, our God, the King of the world. Ala mechiv al-kol. So first for the dish of the 5 grains, on the sustenance and on the food. Vala gefen al pri gefen. So that's where there is a difference, not at the end, but in the beginning, on the vine and on the grapevine and on the fruits of the grapevine. So that's for the wine that he drank. And vala et val pri et, and then the tree, and then the fruits of the tree, that's for the date that he ate. And then on the land, which is for the provision, which is for the chamishim and the dagan, and on the fruits, which again that the earth provides the michya and the peres, which again according to the Rambam you don't end off with something distinct for the wine because that's included in the peres. Now look at the design. If someone ate meat and drank wine, then he's going to make a bracha at the end on the wine. Independently, he's going to make a ala gefen. And on the meat, its own bracha, achrein burn the fashes. Now, if he ate figs or grapes, so that was from the Shivas Aminim. And he also had not from the Shivas Aminim fruits, betapuchim, agasim, and apples, and pears, or gesim, and similar types of things. So, at the end, he's going to make a bracha achs ben shal, it's only going to make what's called an ala eitz. And that includes everything, neshakulim peres eitz, because they're all fruits of the tree. And anything similar like this, which is, for example, let's say he drank wine and he ate with it apples, which the bracha achreina on the wine will exempt the peris, because according to the Rambam, you end of ala oretz vala peris. So that's include even with wine other types of fruits. But even though they're not usually chashuv enough to make an bracha achas min shalish, because it's not like something as distinct as wine, they'll make a regular in the fashion. But once you're making al ha eitz, which is because it's from the Shavas Aminim, so that would include also, even if it's not from the Shavas Aminim, in its bracha achreina.